Hello and welcome to ABA Made Easy. My name is Mauricio and today we'll be talking about reinforcement, punishment, and how to deal with tantrums and other maladaptive behavior. So before we kick things off, I'd like to give a shout out to my aunt who made me these. These are to support the channel. If you notice the logo for ABA Made Easy, it's like a little lizard thing, and that's Lizardo, a cartoon I've been drawing ever since I was about 5 or 6 years old. And she went ahead and made a large Lizardo and a little Lizardo, and it represents someone giving therapy to another person, and it's pretty awesome. So it's gonna go right here for the rest of the episode. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about reinforcement and punishment. So, reinforcement is defined as something that is given after a behavior occurs that increases the likelihood of that behavior occurring in the future. And punishment is just the opposite. Anything that is given or taken away from someone that decreases the behavior in the future. So, with reinforcement and punishment, you have two different types. You have positive and negative. Now, I want you to think about this in mathematical terms. So positive means to add something, and negative means to subtract something, to take something away. So when I say positive reinforcement, it's something you add that increases the behavior in the future. For example, if you give someone a cookie every time they clean their room, and they clean their room more in the future, that's positive reinforcement you're giving, because you're giving them a cookie and it's increasing their behavior. Negative reinforcement means you're simply taking away something that increases the behavior. So let's say for getting good grades in school, the reward is you don't have to do chores for the whole week. So you took away something that they don't like, and that's rewarding. So they're more likely to get good grades in the future because you took away something that they don't like. That's negative reinforcement. They're both good, they're both reinforcement, they're both increasing the behavior. Punishment is decreasing the behavior. So positive punishment is, let's say, if you scream at a child, and I don't recommend this, we behavior analysts don't use punishment for the most part because research shows that reinforcement is way more effective, number one, and number two, everyone's just happier. Why are you gonna use punishment? But anyways, going back to that. So if you scream at a child and it lowers his bad behavior, then that means you use positive punishment. Another thing would be negative punishment, so taking away something they like as a consequence. So taking away their toys because they didn't do something correctly and that decreases that behavior in the future, that would be negative punishment. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? So let me give you a quiz. Okay, there's a child and he is eating his food, right? That he's very neutral about. He doesn't really like the food, right? But you need him to eat the food because it's very healthy. And after he eats his food, you give him dessert, and he loves dessert. And in the future, he eats the food faster, he eats more food, he keeps engaging in that behavior, then you give him the dessert. What did you just do? Positive reinforcement. Why? Because you added the dessert and it increases behavior. Alright, let's try another one. Let's say you're in the shower and you have the hot water running, okay? And then you're like, ow, ow, ow. And you turn it into colder. Ah, now it feels good, right? What did you do? What was that? That was negative reinforcement. Why? Because you decrease the stimulus of heat and aversiveness, and that increases your chances of doing something like that in the future. You're gonna turn the knob when it's hot to get a colder temperature. Okay, so what is this useful for? Okay, so the things you are using to praise, because we're gonna focus on reinforcement here. That's what we're mainly about. We're gonna use reinforcement. So when you praise, those things that you use are called reinforcers, which makes sense because they're involved in reinforcement. So the most important thing is how immediately after the behavior you deliver this reinforcer. So if you have a kid and you're in the grocery store and the child is very compliant during the whole time you're at the grocery store, you're like, look, when we get home, you're gonna get a good prize, and then you wait like an hour, you drive home, and then you give them candy. It's really not that effective. Sure, it could work, but the most effective way to do it is to do it half a second right after it occurs. So they engage in a good behavior that you like speaking or saying words, boom, they get praise or they get candy or they get something else. Okay? So that's how you use reinforcement. You have to use it immediately after the behavior occurs. So now let's talk about tantrums and maladaptive behavior and why they occur. Okay. So there's functions to behaviors. Behaviors don't happen out of the blue, although it might seem like it at times, but actually there's a reason why these behaviors are occurring. So let's say there's a tantrum. There's three main reasons why it would occur. It would be either attention, a tangible, like food or a toy, or they're trying to escape or avoid some kind of task. And the other one, the fourth one, is called automatic reinforcement, but that's more sensory. So we'll get into that. So we're gonna focus on attention and tangibles and all that. So here's what you do. You identify the behavior that you don't want to occur, because if that behavior decreases, it's going to increase the quality of life and is socially significant to the child. So for example, a tantrum on the floor is not as socially acceptable as asking for something, for instance. So let's say the child wants a piece of candy, okay? And you say, no, you can't have a piece of candy, which you should be able to say that, right? But then the baby starts crying, drops to the floor, says, ah, I want it. No, you're just crying, ah. And your response is like, okay, stop crying. Here, have your piece of candy, right? Well, that's exactly what you're not supposed to do, because what's happening? The child is learning that that's a very efficient way of communicating. It's very functional. So when he doesn't get what he wants, just drops on the floor, cries, and then he gets what he wants. So he learns that behavior pattern. So, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to prompt in a way that's socially acceptable to ask for these things. So you could prompt him to say candy or sign for candy. I don't know, you could make up some sign. Or something else that's acceptable, like some gesture or even like an approximation of candy, like cat. And every time they do that, they get the candy. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because you're going to use this thing called differential reinforcement, which is basically that you're reinforcing the correct alternative behavior, and you put the other one under extinction, which means you totally ignore it. So what's going to happen at first? You're going to be like, okay, I'm ready. From now on, he has to say candy every time he wants candy, and drop it on the floor will not work. Okay. So he's reaching for the candy. Nope, no candy. Ah! He goes on the floor, starts crying. What do? Ignore. It's gonna get worse. It always gets worse before it gets better. There's even a name for it. It's called Extinction Burst. And basically, the behavior is gonna get worse and more intense, and the duration is gonna get longer, but then it's gonna get better. I promise, okay? Have faith in the system. The science says it works, and it does work. I can tell you from experience. Don't get scared. It's normal. So the child is going to drop to the floor, scream his head off, start hitting things, throwing things, maybe getting aggressive, and you're thinking, oh man, this is getting worse. But stick to it. Prompt the word candy. Say candy. Say candy. And if they don't want to comply, just keep ignoring. Eventually, they'll give up, and they'll say candy. Once they say candy, not only do you give them a bunch of candy, you give them a hug, you give them praise, you say, wow, you said candy. Great job saying candy. And guess what? They're gonna start thinking in their head, you know, that was a lot easier. Just saying candy got me all this. And screaming and using all that energy on the floor wasn't that effective. Maybe I should just start using language. It's more effective to get what I want. Cool. And that's basically how you get rid of tantrums and bad behaviors. You find the function of the behavior, and then you replace it with a correct alternate behavior, and you reinforce the other behavior instead. So what's another one that they would want? Escape or avoidance, okay? So let's say your child does not want to do homework. He's sitting at a table, he does not want to do homework. And then he starts like wanting to run away or whatever. Well, the behavior that's occurring is that he's running away and he's going into his room and then he's playing with his video games or something. So what do? First of all, you want to keep the video games out of reach so that they're in your control, like I said in the previous episode. But you also want to not allow that escape behavior to occur. So you choose like an alternative behavior that's more efficient. So he could say, I need a break instead. Instead of running off and playing video games, you could say, I need a break. And that's more socially acceptable. And after a while, you could just reinforce when he's doing his homework with like his favorite things to make him want to do his homework, like associate the homework with like a good time. After that, he's gonna get a lot of positive reinforcement, and that will work. The last form and the trickiest one is called automatic reinforcement, and that's basically that there's nothing in your control that's making that behavior occur. So like let's say arm flapping, okay? If they're flapping their arms for sensory purposes, you gotta test it out to see what's usually happening afterwards. If people are saying no flapping, then it's probably attention based too. You know, he's not just doing that to feel his hands or see the pretty hands on the sides. He's also doing it to hear no clapping because he likes the sound of that. Okay, so you want to be careful not to make it a double function behavior. Okay, so when they're doing this, all you gotta do with automatic reinforcement is block. Just block the behavior and prompt a correct behavior, or make them do something that's incompatible with that behavior. So if they go like this, it's like, hey, come over here, let's go wash our hands. Oh, let's go over here, let's knock on the table. Cool, huh? And just keep doing stuff like that to like distract from the wrong behavior. Okay. I hope this episode was helpful for some of you. So just a quick recap. Positive reinforcement, you add something to increase behavior. Negative reinforcement, you remove something to increase behavior. Positive punishment, you add something to decrease behavior. Negative punishment, you remove something to decrease behavior. And the most important thing is immediacy. So after a behavior occurs, you immediately present the reinforcer or the consequence. And for functions of behavior, you have attention, tangible, escape, avoidance, and automatic reinforcement. And what you basically want to do is find an alternate behavior that's going to replace that and only reinforce those behaviors and not reinforce the bad behaviors. Alright, that's it for this time. Hit the like button down below if you can. That will help me out a lot and will spread the word of this channel. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you in the next one.